Hello, my name is Dr. K.P. Asha Mukundan. I am a faculty working with Tata Institute of Social Sciences, School of Social Work, Center for Criminology and Justice. Today we are going to touch upon the topic of child labour. This is a module under the course of juvenile justice within the larger subject of criminology. To begin with, children need to grow in an environment that enables them to lead a life of freedom and dignity. Opportunities for education and training are to be provided for them to enable them to grow into responsible and responsive citizens. Unfortunately, a large portion of children are deprived of their basic rights. They are found working in various sectors of the economy, particularly in the unorganized sector. Some of them are confined and beaten, reduced to slavery, or denied the guaranteed fundamental right of access to free and compulsory education, thus making child labour a human rights issue and a developmental issue. As per the Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Amendment Act of 2016, a child means a person who has not completed his 14th year of age or such age as may be specified in the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009, whichever is more. Defining child labour. It is first necessary to clarify what is not meant by the term child labour. Children's or adolescents' participation in work that does not affect the health and personal development or interfere with their schooling is generally regarded as being something positive. This includes activities such as helping their parents, care for the home and the family, assisting in a family business, or earning pocket money outside school hours and during school holidays. It contributes to children's development and to the welfare of their families. It provides them with skills, attitudes and experience and helps to prepare them to be useful and productive citizens of society. In no way children can engage in such activities or be equated with child labour. Child labour refers to work that is mentally, physically, socially or morally dangerous and harmful to children. It also interferes with their schooling by depriving them of the opportunity to attend school. It also by obliging them to leave school prematurely or by requiring them to attempt to combine school attendance with excessively long and heavy work hours. In its most extreme form, child labour involves children being enslaved, separated from their families, exposed to serious hazards and illness, and or left to fend for themselves on the streets of large cities, often at a very early age. Whether or not particular forms of work can be called child labour depends on the child's age, the type and hours of work performed, the conditions under which it is performed, and the objectives pursued by the individual countries. The answer varies from country to country as well as among sectors within countries. This module aims to assist practitioners, researchers, planners and policy makers in advocating for the issues of prevention of child labour in India. To achieve this aim, the module provides information on United Nations and International Labour Organization conventions, legal provisions in India, child labour in the Indian context and responses to the problem of child labour. UNICEF has classified child work into 3 different categories. 1. Within the family, in which children are engaged without pay in domestic household tasks agricultural pastoral work, handicrafts, cottage industries, etc. Second, with the family but outside the home, in which children do agricultural pastoral work, which consists of seasonal or full-time work. It also includes migrant labor, local agricultural work, domestic services, construction work and informal occupations. This also again includes laundry, recycling of waste, waste employed by others and self-employed. The third category is outside the family, in which children are employed by others in bonded work. This includes apprentice, skilled trades, crepe, embroidery, brass, copper work, where children are engaged. It also involves industrial, unskilled occupation like mines, domestic work, commercial work in shops and restaurants, begging, prostitution and pornography. Children are also engaged in self-employment, which consists of informal sector work like shoe shining, car washing, recycling of garbage, running errands, selling newspapers, etc. Now let's look at some of the International Labour Organization's conventions. That we have the Minimum Age Convention 1973. This landmark convention applies to all economic sectors and to all working children, whether they are employed for wages or working on their own accord. It places obligation on the state to fix a minimum age and defines a range of minimum ages below which no child should be required to work according to the level of development and according to the type of employment and work. The framework as to the minimum age is as follows, which is given in the table here. The minimum age for admission for employment or work in the general category is 15 years. On the other hand, the minimum age for admission to employment and work in developing countries is given as 14 years. To work in light work, the age is given as 13 years and 12 years respectively, whereas to work in an hazardous industry or to work in a work which is hazardous, the minimum age that is given for employment is 18 years generally and 16 years under stricter conditions in both in developed countries as well as developing countries. The convention concerning worst forms of child labour is the next convention we will look into. This convention was adopted in 1999. It provides for the convention covers children under 18 years of age. It requires immediate and effective measures for the prohibition and elimination of the worst form of child labour as a matter of urgency. It includes as worst forms of child labour, slavery, forced labour, sale and trafficking of children, forced recruitment of children for the use in armed conflict, use of children in prostitution, pornography, illicit activities and hazardous work. It requires effective enforcement including penal or other sanctions. It also requires measures for prevention, removal, rehabilitation and social integration. It also calls for access to free and basic education. It requires taking account of the special situation of girls and other children at special risk. This convention also requires monitoring or mentions monitoring mechanisms and programs of action and provides for international cooperation and or assistance. Now we look into the United Nations conventions. The first being the Slavery Convention 1926. This convention endeavored to abolish slave trade, and Article 2 of this convention provides that the state parties undertake, so far as they have not already done so, to prevent and suppress the slave trade and to bring about progressively and as soon as possible its complete abolition in its all forms. The second one is the Supplementary Convention on the Abolition of Slavery, Slave Trade and Institution and Practices similar to slavery, and this came out in 1956. This convention in its article prohibits the activities of sham adoption. It also refers to a situation where a poor family give their child in adoption to a rich family for a price. Such a child is subject to exploitation in the family that adopts him or her. The next is the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights 1948, better known as UDHR. UDHR is considered as the Magna Carta of international human rights. Article 4 of UDHR states that no one shall be held in slavery or servitude, slavery and slave that made shall prohibit in all its form. Slavery has been held to mean a status or condition of a person over whom any one or all of the powers attached to the right of ownership are exercised. Slavery includes trafficking in children. Article 25 further states that motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. The next is the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights 1966. Article 8 of ICCPR prohibits slavery-like practices such as child labor, and also puts obligation on the state parties to check such practices in the private spheres. Article 24 specifically refers to children by requiring positive measures of protection for the child by his family, society and the state. The next on the list is the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights of 1966. Article 10 of this covenant provides that special measures have to be taken for the protection of children and young persons from social and economic exploitation. Their employment in work which is harmful to their moral or health or dangerous to their lives shall be punishable by law. It also requires that states are also required to set age limit below which employment of child labor shall be prohibited. Following this is the Convention on the Rights of the Child, better known as UNCRC of 1989. The UNCRC of 1989 defines a child as every person under the age of 18. Several key provisions of this convention are closely related to those of the ILO child labor standards. The CRC's Article 32 recognizes the right of children to be protected from economic exploitation. This article also protects children from any work that is likely to be hazardous or harmful to the child's health or physical, mental, spiritual, moral or societal development of that which interferes with the child's education. Several other articles of the CRC have a particular bearing on some of the worst forms of child labor: illicit production and trafficking of drugs. Article 33 is about sexual exploitation. Article 34 speaks about abduction, sale and trafficking of children for any purpose, which is Article 35. Other forms of exploitation, prejudice to any aspects of the child's welfare, which is Article 36, and the use of children in armed conflict is Article 38. Optional protocols of the CRC which were adopted in May 2000 complement the Convention number 182 by focusing on two important kinds of child labor. One, the involvement of children in armed conflict and the sale of children, and the second, children in prostitution and child pornography. The Indian Constitution has also several provisions. The framers of the Indian Constitution deemed it necessary to make special provision for the protection of the working children, and some of them are as follows. Article 15(3) enables the state to make special provisions for women and children. It empowers the state to interfere and formulate special enactments that would uplift the social and legal status of children. Article 21 guarantees to each child the protection of life and personal liberty. Article 24 prohibits the employment of children in factories. It emphatically states that no child below the age of 14 years shall be employed in any factory or mine or be engaged in any other hazardous employment. The provision in Article 24 is in the interest of the health and strength of children and in keeping with the directive principle in Article 39E, which imposes a duty on the state to ensure that the health and strength of the children are not abused and that children are not forced by economic necessity to enter vocations unsuited to their age or strength. That brings us to Article 32, which requires the states to interfere and stop hazardous working condition detrimental to the health of child labor and look into their proper physical, mental and social development. It also asks the state to legislate fixing minimum age, working hours and conditions for child laborers. And at the same time, it also prohibits the employment of children below the age of 14 years. Article 39(1) makes it obligatory for the state to direct its policy towards securing. It states that the health and strength of children and that they are given opportunities and facilities to develop in a healthy manner and in conditions of freedom and dignity, and the childhood and youth are protected against moral and material abandonment. We will look at some of the other legal provisions which are there in India. One of them is the Factories Act of 1948. The Factories Act of 1948 prohibits the employment of children below the age of 14 in any factory. The law also placed rules on who, when and how long can pre-adult age, that is 15 to 18 years, can be employed in any factory. The next is the Mines Act of 1952. The Act also prohibits the employment of children below 18 years of age in mines. Then is the Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act of 1986, which was there till 2015. This Act prohibits employment of children below 14 years in certain hazardous process and regulates it in other non-hazardous processes, which is mentioned in section 3. At present, 15 occupations and 57 processes are prohibited under the Act for employment of children. The list was expanded in 2006 and again in 2008. Further, the Act regulates the condition of employment of children in other occupations and processes that are not prohibited. Which also brings us to the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act of 2015. This law made it a crime punishable with a prison term for any person who procures a juvenile or a child for hazardous work and keeps him or her in bondage and withholds the child's earning or uses them for their own purpose. This person is liable for imprisonment up to 3 years and also a fine. This brings us to the new Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Amendment Act of 2016. This amendment allows a child below 14 years of age to work only in family enterprise or entertainment industry with certain conditions, while completely it bans employment elsewhere. The amendment also makes it clear that children between 14 and 18 years will not be allowed to work in any kind of hazardous industries. While there is no penalty provision for parents for the first offence, the employer who employs the child would be liable for punishment even for the first violation. In case of parents, the repeat offenders may be penalized with a monetary fine of up to 10,000 rupees. In case of first offence, the penalty for employers has been increased up to 2.5 times from the existing rupees 20,000 to rupees 50,000. And for subsequent offences, the minimum imprisonment would be 1 year, which may extend up to 3 years. Let's look at the history of child labour in India before we get into details about the 2016 Amendment Act. With the coming of the Arabs, Turks, Afghans and Mughals, the medieval period stretching across from the 11th to 17th century almost saw an all-around impoverishment and degeneration in India. The foreign invasions not only plundered but completely destroyed the wealth and socio-cultural ethos of India. Due to overall economic deterioration experienced by people, the children too were forced to work under adverse conditions. Imposition of foreign culture had a profound impact on all levels, be it families and particularly those of the rural population who could no longer afford wholesome food and amenities for their children. Emphasis on elementary education gradually withered away, which was quite widespread earlier. Among the Hindus, elementary education was mostly confined to the higher caste like Brahmins, Rajputs and Vaishyas. Elementary education among the Muslims was given to those who belonged to aristocratic and rich families at home through the Maulvis. Others had to go to the maktabs situated in mosques. Girls, on the other hand, were seldom given education and their status in comparison to boys remained inferior. The rulers or the people took no remedial steps either. Being a colony of the British, the plight of the children, especially those belonging to the lower strata of society, was certainly gloomy. As British was negotiating its place within a new emerging economic, social and political world order, it was a time of great uncertainty for India, and this inevitably affected its children too. Despite all this moral panic and political reaction on that time, it already was leading to existing reform and philanthropic efforts towards children, which mobilized charity crusades and inspired voluntary efforts. But all this took a back seat in the face of growing imperialism of that time that had taken one of its worst form. This development spelled doom for children as they were thought of as bricks for empire building, and like others continued to be exploited in different ways. The ensuing freedom struggle that nearly spread over 100 years from mid-19th to the mid-20th century aimed not merely at achieving political independence from the British rule, but also in revocating the deliberated sunken society of Indian society, which under decades of slavery had lost its initiative, values and vitality. It was the endeavor of leaders like Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Mahatma Gandhi and others to awaken the people and rouse them to overcome their backwardness, be it in the shape of illiteracy of social, cultural practices like child marriage or neglect in the upbringing of children, etc. As a result, the long years of struggle for freedom saw an all-round spate of activities which may be termed as social action, so to come out of the prevailing weakness in society and to build self-reliance in the people. Consequently, the care of the child came to be viewed upon as a vital element in the resurrection of the nation. The architects of Indian Constitution gave much of their time to inculcate social concern for the citizens of tomorrow, who is the children. This was also the beginning of a spirit of independence at the group of social action level. This period also witnessed the enactment of laws such as the Apprentice Act, Reformatory School Act and Factories Act, which became important factors in the shaping and structuring of a new childhood. We shall now talk about the situation of child labour in India. The attempt to assess the magnitude of child labour has not been easy, and more so in a country like India. Children in India are found to be working both in formal, that is the organized sector, as well as the informal, which is the unorganized sector. While it is easy to account for children working in the organized sector, it is very difficult to enumerate those in the unorganized sector. It is said that India has 1/3 of Asia's child labour and 1/4 of the world's working children. 2/3 of the child labour in India are in the age group of 12 to 15 years, and of the remainder 33% are below the age of 10. For every 1,000 boys at work, there are nearly 1,200 girls. By the estimates of ORG, more than 80% of the working children belong to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, which comprise more than 90% of the bonded labourers of the country. It also finds that approximately 44 million children participate in work in India, of which 21% are in the urban areas and the rest in the rural area. We shall now talk of migrant and bonded child labour. Migrant child labour are children who migrate from rural to urban areas or from small towns to cities alone to urban families. They migrate in search of better job opportunities or to escape from family bondage. They are also picked up by agents and taken away to factories such as weaving, carpentry, carpet making, where they are made to work under extreme exploitative conditions. Bonded child labour, on the other hand, are those who are pledged by their parents to employers in lieu of debts. Parents often take consumption loans from moneylenders who are generally employers or landlords. The rate of interest of such loans are very huge, and with the amounts to be paid accumulating year upon year. In order to get this loan waived, parents pledge their children to the moneylenders for a specified period of time. The system of child bondage still prevails largely in the agrarian sector and some cottage industry, and in backward regions, particularly Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. The phenomenon of urban child labor stems from industrialization, which caused one of the most exploitative forms. We also find street children there. These children belong to three broad categories. 1. Children on the streets are working. Children who have families but spend most of their times on the street. They earn for themselves and may or may not contribute to the family income. The second category is children off the streets and who are working. These children have left their families in villages or smaller towns and migrated to the cities. As they have no place to live, they spend their nights on the railway platform, bus stations, public parks, etc. They live independently and spend whatever they earn in the day. Abandoned, orphaned children are working children without families or whose families have abandoned them. They spend their lives on the street and have no one to provide any kind of support. They are the most exploited and abused lot in the categories. Then comes the girl child workers who face a huge lot of exploitation compared to their male counterpart. Most of the girls in the urban area work as domestic workers, where they are subjected to various forms of exploitation and abuse. They are usually found working as domestic servants and become more vulnerable to sexual exploitation compared to the male children. The plight of children, or especially the plight of girls in urban cities, is all the more alarming. According to a report published in the Hindustan Times on 1st January 1996, about 15% of India's nearly 2 million prostitutes are believed to be children. A 1994 report on child prostitution prepared by the Ministry of Human Resource Development (HRD), Government of India, revealed that about 30% of all prostitutes in the 6 major cities of Calcutta, Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Bangalore and Hyderabad were under 20 years of age, and that 39% of these entered prostitution before their 18th birthday. Cooking, cleaning and childcare and other domestic duties not termed as child labor are to be performed by a girl child, because of which she is unable to go to school and deprived of recreational opportunities. Such domestic work is economically important because it frees parents to go out and earn. In its more individual form, girls end up in urban homes with so-called relatives as maid of all work, on call virtually the entire day. Domestic work is not only an unrecognized form of economic contribution, but also remains unappreciated as a form of child labor. This is as per the National Resource Center on Child Labor 1997. Some of the causes of child labor is what we are going to see next. Poverty is usually considered to be an essential factor behind child labor. Millions of Indian households live in extreme poverty and need the money which their children can earn. Since by definition poor households spend the bulk of their income on food, the poverty level in a relatively poor country such as India is defined as only 20% more than the income required for purchasing the minimum nutritional needs for a family. It is clear that the income provided by the working children is critical to their survival. However, it cannot be said that poverty necessarily causes child labor. In many poor households, children are allowed to attend schools. Child labor exist because certain areas and certain families have certain traditions of children following their parents' footsteps. If a family has a tradition of a particular occupation, there is a huge likelihood that its children will be caught up in the same process. A census enumerates only those workers who are engaged in economically productive work, and when it comes to child labor, they are merely counted as part of wage labor force. However, most of the work done by children may not be wage earning at all. When they work as a part of family labor, they are hardly ever paid wages separately, despite contributing to the total economic activity of the household. Children in the rural areas are engaged in a variety of activities which may or may not be considered productive, but they do help to free parents to take part in wage earning activities elsewhere. Some school going children are also engaged in productive activities. Another reason for inaccuracy in the census data can be that during the survey, children are often not counted as child laborers because at the time of actual counting, they may be away from home. In rural areas, children may be studying who are made to work in agricultural work during the harvesting and sowing season. Most estimates cover only those children who have fixed job, and these exclude the majority who only work occasionally. In this context, let us do a critical review of the amendment of the 2016 Child Labour Act. The new act prohibits the children under the age of 14 from working, but the problem is the exception that they have made for family business. Children below 14 years will be allowed to work in family business outside school hours and during holidays. Children between 15 and 18, now defined as adolescents, will be permitted to work except in mines and industries. It has also drastically reduced the number of hazardous jobs that 15 to 18-year-olds are banned from doing from 83 to 3. The bill seems to have brought in a new concept of part-time students, part-time child labor, along with part-time teachers. The government says the law will help poor families earn a living and give children a chance to acquire skills. Now some children will go to school, come back, study, play, learn, relax and otherwise enjoy life. But some other poor children must wake up early in the morning, work before going to school, then run to school and come back and work again at home and sleep late in the night. They will have no leisure, no time to play or study. This would lead to serious short and long term physical, psychological and social consequences. This is a roadblock to the development agenda, a law which with its head buried in the sand. Child labor is not a labor issue but one of child rights and child protection. Education, plays, sports, leisure and rest are not luxuries for a few. They are child's right and must be taken very seriously. In conclusion, there is a general acceptance to the social menace of child labor in India. The acceptance from the people stems from the notion that if children do not work, their family would starve. On the other hand, are families who feel that more the hands, the more would be the income. Little do they realize that with more hands come more mouth to feed as well. Similarly, people fail to see that children are cheap source of labor. The employers of child labor have the choice to employ their parents as well. but they would not do so as adult labor comes with a cost more than that of employing children. Over and above that, children are more vulnerable to exploitation and have more energy to work. These children who are exposed to such hard work and extreme conditions are unable to work effectively once they cross their prime youth stage. They are then left with no choice but to send their children out for work, and the wheel keeps turning to keep the menace of child labor alive. Laws can be a deterrent, but a social evil can only be eliminated through social awareness and individual commitment. There is a whole lot of information available on this subject in the references that have been provided along with this module. Also, for further details and information, you could also browse the net, where there is a lot of information on the Indian and international context on the issue of child labor. Thank you.